All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. My name is Luke Thomas. It is the 28th of May, 2026. This is episode 304 of my live chat. Thank you so much for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. Let's see. On the docket today, we've got Rogan worried about the elements for UFC White House. I biked, what day is it today? Thursday. Yesterday, I took my bike down to the White House, and well, as far as you can get to it, which is 15th Constitution and 17th. And then I guess, what's the back street that they've already blocked off? I think it's all the way up to I, maybe. I'm not sure how far it goes on the backside. But in any case, 15th, 17th, and Constitution. And I took a look at everything. I actually have some photos that we could probably take a look at or whatever, because I didn't just see the structure itself for the White House, but then how they were filling out the ellipse. And what I noticed, and no one's brought this up yet because I guess people haven't seen it, on the ellipse itself, they've got different like pavilions that they're kind of building, and that would make sense. They're probably going to have to do, they're going to have vendors, they're going to have like Q&As or meet and greets or something like that in all these different areas, I'm guessing, because it's not just on fight night, right? Like there's other parts to it. And then I noticed that at least one of the pavilions had a second story to it that was enclosed and I think air conditioned. So I'd be curious to see who gets the air conditioning and for what purpose. That'll be kind of fun. All right. Neither here nor there. For the present moment, we can talk about that. Colby Covington just wants to wrestle for the rest of his life, I guess. All kinds of stuff. Your chat as much as it is mine. So thumbs up if you haven't already. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you haven't already. I'd appreciate it just the same. We've got work to do. So without further ado, let's get this party started, shall we? The way this works is I put up a picture yesterday. People keep thinking that I'm just posting selfies for anything other than like, why am I posting here? Look. Why am I posting this? Why am I posting that? Do I think it's because I think I look cool? Do you think, yes, I am an idiot, but I'm not that fucking stupid. I'm posting it as a joke because it elicits a strong response. Not because I'm like, oh, this is a great way to look cool. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I put that up yesterday. You guys fill it up. You vote to the top the ones you like. We'll do about an hour on that. And then we'll do the paid portion where you certainly don't have to. But if you'd be so kind, it goes a long way towards supporting the channel. You can put a donation into the super chat. We'll put your super chat on the screen and then we'll talk about it there, right? There's an exception, which is that if you are a member, you can basically do that for free. Okay? All right, don't put 15 of them in there, but you got a couple, maybe even a few. You could put them in there. All right, very good. Hope everyone's having a great week. I was on CNN this morning. I'm not sure how many people saw. I did. What's it called? What's the name of the show at 6 a.m.? CNN This Morning. That's the name of the show. It's hosted by Audie Cornish. She invited me back on. We talked a little bit about UFC White House. Not that much. Dude, the television's so weird, right? Because on these podcasts and live broadcasts like this here on YouTube, you can basically go, not that it's advisable, but you can go essentially as long as you want. The audience will judge whether it's good or whether they want to stick around, but you have latitude to go. You don't have any latitude on TV. Like you're on there for, you get, I'm not kidding. Maybe the ability to answer 2 or 3 questions kind of quickly. They kept me around for an extra segment, which they hadn't done before. And then we talked about like where young male voters are. We talked about Graham Plattner. And then at the end, it was kind of, I didn't understand the segment. The producer asked me, hey, what are you and your friends talking about in the group chat? And I was like, I don't think I can talk about pornography on the show. It's like, I don't think I can talk about hardcore pornography on this show. I don't think that's what y'all want to hear, in all seriousness. I was like, she was like, are y'all talking about anything sports related? I'm like, I've been talking to Long Island Luke about the Knicks, but honestly, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm mostly talking about is the presidential elections in Colombia this weekend. So I talked a little bit about that on the air, and then everyone else was like, yeah, like I'm watching this new reality show, and I'm like, did I not understand the assignment? I guess I didn't. I don't know. In any event, I appreciate them having me on. And as soon as that was over, a bunch of other CNN producers reached out to me. So I might be on there. I guess we'll see. Things could change between now and then, but I might be on there a lot between now and not merely fight week itself, but now they booked me for a day after the event as well. So I don't know. People are like, why don't you go on Fox? They don't ask. Would I go on Fox? Yes, I would. I would happily go on Fox. I'd be delighted to talk. In fact, I need to talk to their audience more than I need to talk to anybody else's audience. So yes, I'd be delighted. Fox, if you're watching this, I'll go on your shows. I don't care. Let me know. All right. I think that's it. Right? I think that's it. Okay. That preamble is done. Let's get the questions going. Ooh, this is not readable, is it? No, of course not. Let's bump that up a little bit. There we go. No, I do not wish to sign in. Okay. First one. What was your reaction to the enhanced games? It's a good question. And honestly, not much of one. There's a couple of, there's one really big problem with the enhanced games. You guys know my views. I am not offended in any way. I wouldn't say in any way. I mean, they're, youth sports, for example, there should be no drug use. But, adults who have made a calculated decision, particularly those at the top of their respective food chains, that they want to take performance-enhancing drugs to be able to compete in their sport of choice. This is not a thing that necessarily offends me, right? I don't think that's a one-size-fits-all policy for every sport, but I think for certain kinds of sports, or at least some sports events, it's not a big deal to me. So, for example, they had Hafthor Bjornsson, the mountain from the Game of Thrones, trying to break the deadlift record. He failed at it, but the reality is you couldn't even train the way, fuck competing. You couldn't even train the way he trains, or any of those guys, Mitchell Hooper, any of them. Martins Lisis, or Leitzis, how you pronounce his last name, I always get it wrong. You couldn't even train the way that they train if you didn't take steroids. It's like literally not even possible, right? So the issue for me is when they, I'm not interested per se in a steroid Olympics where it's like, oh, we've got the decathlon, we've got deadlift, which is not really an Olympic sport, but you get the point. Or, running or swimming or whatever. It's like all of this under this kind of grand experiment of, what happens when you let people win. First of all, some natural athletes won, which I thought was not a surprise to me, but it seemed like a big surprise to some other people. But I just want to point out, I don't need to see a phony Olympics where everyone can juice. That's not necessarily all that interesting to me. What's more interesting is when, or at least at a bare minimum, more palatable to me, is watching a sport where, for example, World's Strongest Man, there are versions of strongman competitions for amateurs where you don't have to use performance-enhancing drugs. But if you're a heavyweight and you want to compete at the highest level, you just have to. There's really no other way to do it. I don't have a problem with that. I'm actually interested in seeing what they can do in that regard. But that's just going to see a strength event, not an event where there's strength and, again, swimming and racket sports and racing and track and field. I don't really care about that. And I feel like it kind of missed the mark because it all happened pretty quickly. It was hard to know who was natural and who wasn't if you weren't following closely. And it just felt like a little bit of a confused pitch. I mean, there was a single pitch, hey, you can use and you can compete here. But in terms of actually being entertaining for individual groups of fans, I don't know that it necessarily gave us that, right? It just felt a little bit off the mark. More to the point, this is something I've been telling, this is shit I've been saying on this live chat forever. It is obvious that people take performance-enhancing drugs for a very good reason, and they confer substantial benefit, right? We all kind of know this relative to what your genetic baseline is at a bare minimum. But the other truth, and you saw this, is dude, you can take steroids. That's not going to make you better than a world-class athlete. It's just not. I can take all the steroids in the world. I'm not going to be stronger, than I don't know, if Yoel Romero in his prime, if he trained, hardcore. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It doesn't work that way. Or at a bare minimum, I might be able to get bigger on pure steroids, but being able to athletically apply it in the way that Yoel Romero can, given his genetic gifts, and and then the sports programs, the state-sponsored sports programs that he was a part of, you're not going to beat that guy unless you're also of the same kind of genetic stock. And then again, you might have been from the same program, started early enough, blah, blah, blah. There's more than just genetic stock that goes into it, obviously. But like those are hugely determinative factors, massively. And you can see very clearly people are like, well, how come these people were taking and then they were losing? Well, because it's not, they are powerful, they are real. There should be something that acknowledges that, then that could be its own anti-doping system. But this idea that it's going to just lift anybody who uses it to victory it's just this weird thing that people think. It's not the Bane juice that, he just like punches a button on his arm and all of a sudden he's just turning into like, there's some powerful like godlike creature where he can break Batman's back over his knee. That's not what they do. So I actually thought it was a pretty interesting lesson in not necessarily dispelling that performance enhancing drugs can't be powerful. They clearly can be, or that there's no place whatsoever for either prohibitions or regular, I'd say intelligent use case regulations around them. That's not the point either. But that they are magic beans, that they are, anybody can just do better on them, or that the extent to which you can get improved from them. This can vary widely athlete to athlete. This can vary widely. If you're talking about a narrower subset, the 10 best people in the world at one particular Olympic event, then yes, then having some kind of clear sense about what your anti-doping policy is when you're talking about people who are very, very close to one another, then it can confer huge advantages. But in other scenarios, you can see it does not necessarily confer. They all confer advantages, but the kind of advantages that enable you to win, several natural athletes won. Several. This tells you a lot, man. This tells you a lot about some of the myths that people have about steroids. So I kind of thought that, like, in a weird way, they made steroids appropriately look less cool, right? There's a place for them in sports. I do believe that. There's a time for them in sports. I also believe that. But I didn't get the sense that like the games themselves were all that interesting. And because you saw some disparity in people trying to break records, for example, and they were using and they couldn't come close, or natural athletes winning in other cases, it kind of dispelled some of the more, I'll say this, hyperbolic urban legends around performance enhancing drugs. People should take them seriously. Regulation matters. It's real. I get it. I fully understand. But as I've been trying to say on this channel, like, they can affect a lot of different people very differently, and they can lift a lot of people very differently. And just kind of assuming it all does the same thing for everybody who takes it, I think that these games went a long way towards dispelling some of those myths. I saw so many people surprised that like people were using and not breaking records. People were using and then losing to natural athletes. And I'm like, that is the least fucking surprising thing I could have thought of. But the fact that people were surprised by it tells you a lot about what impressions they had about what performance enhancing drugs does to a person. I'm glad my neighbor is mowing their yard at 3:19 in the afternoon. Appreciate that. This may be too heavy, but I heard recently that 1 in 5 severe gambling addicts try to unalive themselves. We can just say kill. I'm not going to, this is not TikTok where they'll, I guess, downvote what's the word I'm looking for? They'll limit the algorithmic expression of it. A way higher number than for all other addictions. I'm not sure what the numbers are, but let's just assume that that's true. And things like Kalshi and Polymarket are making things even worse for young men. Is there a certain statistical severity that could cause you to break ties with ad spots from sports betting companies? I suppose that there could be. Sure. I'm not sure what that is. I haven't thought about that, but yes, there certainly could be. I know it's a genuinely hard consideration, but I just always love your takes on this kind of stuff. It's a great question. I've certainly thought about it. I'm not one of these, first of all, like with Kalshi and Polymarket, like prediction markets where people are betting on genocide. That's just I'll never go along with that. Never in a million years. I just can't get on board with that at all. Like, is the U.S. going to bomb Iran? It's like we're talking about killing people here. We should not be able to. I mean, that just feels like the kind of thing you should not be able to bet on. Personally, now that's different than sports betting as such, but I understand that like the next level of that is that kind of a thing. So just sort of getting at the fringe of it, with those kinds of things where you can bet on whether or not people will essentially die. I just think that's very bad for society, straight up. In terms of the other things, again, I believe that combat sports have a special relationship to gambling that is totally unique relative to all of the other sports. And I'm not in any way opposed to, I don't know if I've seen any bills to this effect, at least not at the federal level. But what I would say is what we would call maybe sensible regulation around this. I've seen some things. I don't know if this would pass or what the value of it is. Excuse me, I got something I want. But I've seen people say things like, for example, getting rid of prop bets or, other forms of not so much eliminating sports gambling altogether, but then kind of corralling the things that are identified or flagged as excesses or that lead to problems. But yes, I'm aware of some of these things. I have been thinking, God damn it, I've been thinking more and more about it as time goes on. So, again, I think that combat sports has a very special case that are absolutely distinct in every possible way from other sports. You really need to understand combat sports are less so outgrowth of a sporting route in different directions, and it is more that they are part of vice culture, and it's their export that they bring over to the other sports from inside of a different cultural route. That's really the difference. These two things go hand in hand. There should never be a world where you're not allowed, in my opinion, on fights. There should never be a world where, and again, how you constrain it, how you prevent abuses, how you do all those things, we can have a conversation and I'm happy to have it. Believe me, I'm not shy. I'm not shying away from any of this. But I do also believe that, like, dude, I only learned about sports gambling circa 2003 or 4 by virtue of like getting hardcore back into MMA around that time after getting out of college. Like, it's how I learned about it. And it wasn't even remotely legal anywhere at that point. And it was already full inside the sport. So if there is sensible legislation that is introduced to corral abuses, excesses, or limit harms, again, devil will be in the details, but I would absolutely support something like that. And then just flat out, like Kalshi hit me up. No, didn't even answer it. I was like, nope, not interested in that kind of a thing. I just really, really believe, and the evidence for it is overwhelming, that combat sports will always have a unique relationship to both vice culture. And then, and when I say that, I don't mean like, people committing crimes per se, but kind of the sort of the things you live on the edgier side of life. They'll always be connected. Because they are connected. They are part of the same culture. They're different expressions of that culture, but they come from the same one. That's very, very different. Very, very different than all of the other sports that go into it. This is a good question. How does boxing get away with being so obviously corrupt? Billions of people see it. Thousands actively call it out, yet it persists. This is a really, 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 really good question. It's a very, very good question. Man, I will tell you, the answer is that some people do just give up on it. That should be noted. And I think that the scope of how long the problem can go on before some kind of solution or industry change is introduced can make you feel like nothing is ever happening. But I would actually argue what TKO is doing, which is highly unusual, but nevertheless kind of speaks to TKO, man. Like when they say things like, life is all about timing, sometimes you're like, it doesn't feel that way. I mean, yes, it can feel that way, but sometimes things just get forced, it doesn't feel like it's about timing at all. And that's not the case here. Like they waited and they waited and they waited. And the really big difference is not just that for a time, all of the promoters in at least American boxing lost all of their television deals. Some of that has been put back in place, right? Obviously, Zuffa Boxing's on Paramount, but there's other ones too. Like, MVP is doing women's boxing on ESPN, and I think Top Rank signed a DAZN deal, or maybe a combination deal, I think. And there'll be some other ones too. But in any case, the challenge is that Let me collect my thoughts here for just a second. The challenge is that it has taken so long for a certain kind of rot to set in that, yes, the actual real big change for TKO specifically is that Donald Trump got put in office and then can help shepherd some of this legislation through Congress, which I know that the Trump administration is doing. Again, I had meetings with people on Capitol Hill, and they were telling me that a lot of the directives of the Republicans and the various committees that we were talking about, they were taking, marching orders from the White House, and they were moving things along by request from the White House. So like that to me is, the real game changer. But it just so happened to coincide with a very interesting moment in time where some of this layered rot really began to show itself, and then they went in there. Their timing was sublime. The point I'm trying to make is it feels like sometimes nothing can be done. And for these individual instances where you're watching Rigo get screwed, or, you guys have seen it. How about the Rolly Romero fight, which with Ismael Boroso? I mean, one of the worst stoppages you'll ever see in combat sports, period, MMA or boxing. Nothing seems to happen individually to those kinds of things, but not policing that, among other problems, creates a certain kind of institutional laziness or inertia to the point where rot develops over time, and then nothing happens, and then everything happens all at once. So I just would challenge a little bit the idea that like nothing ever seems to happen. I would actually argue something is happening now, and the conditions that make that possible are kind of the unwillingness or inability of the industry itself to police itself, not merely on bad judges or bad referees or corruption or some other kind of thing, but just really not policing their ranks generally, sanctioning bodies, creating a million titles, putting fights on pay-per-view that had no business being on there and that didn't deliver, over and over and over and over again. All of it kind of takes a really long time to accumulate into something, but it eventually does. And you are beginning to see the end of that paradigm, I think. I'm not sure what the status of the legislation is. I guess we'll see. But, you certainly get the idea. In terms of the RICO part of it with Usyk, what can you say? The commissions have created rules where they basically never have to answer for incompetence. I will tell you what, man, I don't know what the future of combat sports is in this country or any other one, particularly as it relates to boxing. I guess we're going to have to see. I mean, I think I have certain worries that I've communicated to you all, but I don't really know what's going to happen. But what I will say is if there is ever an opportunity to redo the regulatory model, that we just either eliminate state sanctioning bodies or we radically overhaul them, because they are failures. They are failures of the highest order. They do not do their jobs at all. This was a fight that was overseas, I recognize, but they're all part of this kind of institutional boxing class that they all learn from and borrow and adopt best practices or frankly habits from one another as well. And so either corruption's a part of it, which, again, boxing is part of vice culture. Like there's going to be, why did Pride get shut down? They lost their Fuji TV deal because it was revealed they had ties to the Yakuza. I mean, there's other problems too, but that was a pretty fucking big one. It's part of vice culture. It just is. Like you can like that fact or you can hate that fact, but it's part of it. So that's going to be a part of it. Then on the incompetence side, the commissions have basically eliminated the ability for them to ever be checked, absent like a governor or some other kind of major, elected or powerful official intervening in a way that they ordinarily do not. Like, for example, when Nick Diaz was given a 5-year suspension by the Nevada Commission for weed, the governor got involved. And then they had to really like turn tail and amend what they were doing. But that I mean, you can't count on that. You can't count on, wow, the treatment of this athlete was so egregious that the governor of the state is gonna be like, whoa, what has happened? I'm sorry, what is it? He's got better shit to do. So for him to be like looking at that is a huge deal, but you can't count on that. And they're not going to do that very often. In fact, I think I've seen it once in my whole time covering sports. It's just extremely rare. So you've got this attachment to vice culture. You've got this bureaucratic system that has eliminated the ability for other stakeholders, to ever check it or amend it or fix it. it's kind of what you're going to get. The reason people don't really walk away is like, if you fall in love with boxing as such, what is your alternative? It's all run by the same people. Okay, some by Dana, some by Bob Arum, some by Eddie Hearn, fine. But in the people regulating it, the people who might want to do the ne'er-do-wells, they're always casting wide nets. You either have to walk away from boxing almost completely, or you just kind of have to put up with it. And I think a lot of fans are like, well, we hate it, but we just put up with it because we love boxing. Did you see what Ngannou said about the lead up to his Anthony Joshua fight? I did. Apparently, they had Ngannou show up at 10 p.m. for a 3 a.m. fight. Yes. And they changed it a bunch of times. And Joshua got told to sleep late and come at 1 a.m. or something. Also true. Ngannou was needlessly warming up, getting exhausted, and they just seemed to have intentionally kept him in the dark. After what boxing did to Rico, I really feel like the fix is in for crossover guys. This was kind of the point of the last video that I made, that I uploaded on this channel on Sunday. Namely, if you're dude, it's one thing to be an A side, and then there's obviously naturally a B side, but you're not just like, oh, well, there's one and then there's the other. The power dynamic is enormous. Like, I remember when they were trying to figure out Mayweather Pacquiao, they kind of knew Mayweather would be the A side, but the amount of negotiation that I'm told went into that was substantial, because Pacquiao had been the A side essentially for a year. I mean, I think 10 years at that point almost. And also it was a bit of a big change for him. But the power dynamic is incredible. You dictate, if you're the real A side, dude, you dictate where the fight takes place, when it takes place. I realize Turkey kind of changes this, but historically, if you're the A side, if you're Floyd, what kind of gloves you're using, what the gloves are made of, how heavy the gloves might be. And then the commission weighs in on some of this too, how big the ring might be. Look at Jake Paul changing up the ring. I mean, I realize he was the promoter in that particular case too, but Floyd had the size of the ring changed routinely. You can do so freaking much. And then the other part is, even if they're not corrupt, if you're the A side and let's say they're overmatched against the B side, even if the B side does well, they'll sometimes, they'll grade them on almost like a reverse curve. Rather than elevating the score, they actually downgrade it, because it's like, oh, well, it can't really be happening. These are token punches or strikes that they might be landing, but they're, and this is a nice, good job, very good job. But come on, let's be real. You're not actually beating this A side guy. Like, you have to beat the power structure. You have to beat the guy who should be better than you at this if you're a crossover guy. And you have to beat a boxing system that is simply not prepared for you to do what you're going to do. You basically, I'm not saying you can't win by decision. I think we eventually might see it, but you probably have to win by knockout. You got to stop that fucking guy. And honestly, if you knock him down, you might have to knock him down a bunch of times if you can't stop him outright before the referee intervenes there too. Because they're not going to be ready to jump in on a guy who might still be standing but getting battered like Rico was. I mean, he was hurt. I think we can all agree. I'm not saying he should have stopped it when they did, quite the opposite. But, something like that. Like, that would never happen to Usyk. Do you think if Verhoeven had knocked down Usyk and then he got up and then battered him and Usyk was kind of covering like that again, do you think that referee would have intervened? Fuck no. Fuck no. There's no chance in hell. So now think about all the things you have to beat to win that fight. That's why those odds are like that. You have to beat the boxing establishment. You have to beat the soft bigotry of low expectations. You have to beat, by the way, the guy you're fighting should be better than you. You have to fight the fact that you're not used to 10 or 12 3-minute rounds. You might have to be fighting in someone else's backyard. You might have to be fighting, again, playing fuck games like they did with Francis by telling him his fight's at 1. He shows up at 10. Oh, get ready. Oh, we're not ready. Oh, get ready. Oh, we're not ready. Oh, no, now our fight's not going to be until 3. Then they show Anthony Joshua showing up at 1. I'm not saying that would have made the difference. I still would have picked Joshua to win, but you can see how it might have affected performance as well. Small margins can sometimes play a huge difference here. You have to beat all of that. That's why these crossover fights, man, they're not rigged in the sense of some of them could be, but if we're just extending the benefit of the doubt here, that it's not actually corruption, it doesn't even matter, bro. You can't beat corruption to begin with, right? Like if they're going to do what they're going to do, then that's it. Okay. But even if that's not a part, you have to beat their incompetence and you have to beat their institutional unwillingness to let go or to see you in a place where you could be shining. They don't want to see any of that shit, whether they admit it or not. And it's a huge, monumental hill to overcome. The person who does it, he honestly, he or she, they might do it via decision. I don't want to preclude that possibility, but honestly, my biggest guess is you're going to have to do that via decision, or sorry, you have to do that via stoppage. And that is, I mean, just think about how hard that is to do. Oh yeah, you got to go stop Usyk. Okay, good fucking luck, you know. In light of Dana's recent media tour, he has certainly been on one. If you could have a one-on-one interview with him, no censorship, what would you ask him? I get asked this question time to time. It's not that I'm interested. Like, there's nothing that he has in terms of information that I am especially interested in learning. It's more just like, so for example, people will ask him like, hey, Trump did something. By the way, just want to point out, like, I actually don't think it's a problem in terms of getting the event some eyeballs. And dude, I was on Constitution yesterday. The amount of people stopping to, I mean, people stopped to take pictures of the White House no matter what, but like it was high, it was unusually high, even for a day with like shitty weather. It was like rainy and stuff. And there were I mean, as soon as people came by and they saw the arch, they were like, ooh, it's gonna do a big number. I want to be very clear about this. This event is going to succeed. I mean, I guess if it rains or some shit like that, who knows? But provided that the inclement weather is not a factor, this thing is going to do a huge number. Like it's going to be big. There's just simply no question about it. But one of the things that's coming up in his media tour, where like the fighters don't get talked about at all, it's just about UFC or UFC's relationship to Trump or about Dana specifically. I do think that's going to be enough to still make people tune in. But it is kind of an interesting note that they're not promoting the fights. But to answer the question, so for example, he talked to, I think it was it Steve Inskeep of NPR or David Remnick of the New Yorker. Oh, I think it was Inskeep. And he's asking like, you know, this guy is basically like going after immigrants and you've got a lot of immigrants on your roster. Like, isn't there a contradiction in this? And he's like, nah, it's not what the president wants. The president is like, you know, he wants to get rid of the bad people. We did all that. And now he wants to, you know, make sure people do this the right way. Like totally fact-free. Totally fact-free. I mean, anybody who knows anybody who's on a green card knows that these fuckers are living in terror. Raise your hand if you know someone living on a green card. Mercifully, everyone in my house and in my family is a citizen, but I know a bunch of people on a green card, and they're terrified. They're terrified. They've all deleted their social media. You know, they won't. They are concerned about where they're going to live when they have to renew, and if they're even going to get renewed. Like they're absolutely. Some of them are, you know, having to carry all kinds of identification on them because one of them has been picked up by ICE previously. He got out after a day, but you know, you get the point. Like they're living in fucking terror. But even that's not the point. The point is Dana will often say, you know, I'm not that political. And they asked him like, do you support the Iran war? And he's like, I'm not that political. And I'm like, well, here you are defending the immigration policies. So now we can mark you down as like pro-Trump on the immigration policies. I think that someone should go down the list. Go all the way down, piece by fucking piece on everything he's done and get him to answer for it. Because the reality about what he's doing is that they want to push Trump on the audience, which they did for even before 2021, but certainly after January 6th, all the way up through the election. I think he's been, how many times has he been here since he got elected? Once, maybe? Because he was at 327 or 328, right? So I think just once. Well, after he got elected, but I'm saying since he got sworn in, because he did that Jones-Miocic one. But the point I'm trying to make is they pushed him. Now that it worked, right? Of course, you can't say the UFC did it all, but they were, you know, they played a pretty big role. It worked. You can tell that Trump feels very strongly about it by virtue of giving them an event that you literally couldn't buy. Okay. They're getting this legislation pushed through Congress, which I am now, again, I had meetings on the Hill with people who were very clear about this. Like they want to do all of this stuff that has political consequences for the world. They want to take the benefit, But then when the political baggage comes up and they have to answer for it, they want to be like, guys, we're just not that. We're just not that political. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. You now have to answer for the political baggage. What do you think about high gas prices? When do you think they will come down? What if they don't come down? Who is responsible for the war in Iran? Let's talk about some of those immigration policies. Over 200 U.S. citizens have been detained in ICE. Is that a good thing? About in ICE detention? Is that a good thing? We just deported actually a guy who had a birth certificate and had identification, and they still got rid of him because ICE refused to look at his identification. He's now suing the government to get back in. Is this a good thing that we should be doing? Are these things that should be allowed? Are you okay with the cyanide bombs that they have now allowed to kill wildlife? What about allowing for glyphosate to be put back into crops? Or what about getting rid of the clean water protections that they have all rolled back? What about clean air protections? What about data center? Down the fucking list on all of it, because you helped return all of that to power, and you didn't do it ambiguously. You didn't do it on the sly. You gave this guy an opportunity to walk out, to get media attention, and to get fanfare and genuflection in a way that he also couldn't buy that, particularly after January 6th or during his campaign. Couldn't buy that. You know, they could have put him up in the box. They didn't. They put him ringside or cage side, and you all know what happens. Then the fighters get in on the act. Like, dude, no wonder he wanted to go to those things. And no wonder he wants to give them legislation. And no wonder he wants to give them a White House event, because this is quid pro quo. This is tit for tat. But then they're like, well, it's just not that political. It doesn't work that way, Bubba. It doesn't work that way. You don't get to help return a guy to power who has the most extreme agenda, who is quite fucking literally the most corrupt guy to ever hold this office. To say nothing, the slush fund itself would do it, but then you have this new no bid contract that went to one of Don Jr.'s firms that went from, I think, like 20 million in value, or 20 million in valuation. They get a $600 million deal, and now they're worth over $2 billion. That just came out hours before today's broadcast. Who knows what hell awaits us tomorrow? Like, you think you can just do this, and the only thing you have to answer for is, this guy's my friend. We're not all toddlers. Some people are toddlers. That's true. And some people are mentally toddlers. That is also true. But most of us are not toddlers. That is an answer that you give to somebody who is either cognitively impaired or a toddler. But for the rest of us who are adults, you are on the motherfucking hook for all of this, for every last bit of it. And they should hold his feet to the fire in going right down that list. I want to hear answers, and don't let him squirm. I don't have one. Sure you do. How could you not? You helped put in power a guy who pledged to run on this. How could you not? How could you not? Doesn't make any sense. We're adults here. Let's talk like adults. They want to have, I mean, I understand something too. Like, another reason why this event's going to be really, really big is an MMA event with just MMA media hyping it up is not that big. But then you get sports media involved, and it gets even bigger. But now look what they've got. They've got political media doing it, and it's even bigger than that. What fight, with the exception of maybe McGregor, but what fight could they put on and get that set of concentric circles? MMA media, sports media, and then a huge array of political media. There's nothing they could do to ever juice their product like that. It couldn't happen. You could put McGregor versus Habib too. It wouldn't be necessary. I mean, that would be pretty big. Okay, something like that. But you see what I mean? Like, and that's not possible because Habib would never do it. There's no other matchup on their roster they could put together that would produce this. It doesn't exist, which is why, like, kind of the fighters like Poatan and Topuria are kind of like an afterthought. So, like, you're attached to a political project. This is part of the Trump spoils system, which he is famous for. Oh, but we don't have a political, I'm not a political guy. My guy, you are fucking neck deep in it. You are neck fucking deep in it. And he should have to answer for all of it. What kind of crowd reaction do you expect DJT to get if he attends next week's Knicks Finals games at MSG like he mentioned? Not great. If it was a standard Knicks game, I think it would be, let's say, still a sellout. I think it'd be way worse. If it's this one, which is a playoff game, it's harder to say because you might have some people there who are not New Yorkers, or they might be really, really rich and, they don't really care about having some sort of political take, or they might agree with the president or something like that. I think it might be a little bit less, but I think in general it's going to go pretty poorly. Yeah, I mean, he got booed at a Commanders game a while ago. He got cheers too, but it was mostly boos. And he got some cheers, he got some boos. We got a lot of silence at UFC. I mean, dude, UFC is like his Alamo. If you're not getting rapturous applause at UFC, that's like for Trump anyway. That's a problem. That's a problem. So I think it will be bad for him, but I don't think it'll be worst case scenario. But I mean, if he's going in there and he's expecting to get applause or it'll be mixed, I don't think it'll be that mixed. I think it'll even under the case of like, oh, do you see the tickets for the? Oh my god, do you see the motherfucking tickets for this game, for the next game? I think I mean, they don't even know who the opponent is yet, but like, what it's like with where did I see this? Or maybe it was tickets for the last one, the one they closed out. No, because that was in Cleveland. No, it's for the next one. It's for the next one. Some of the courtside, not even courtside, but like one row back from courtside, are over 100,000 each. You know what I mean? Who's paying for that and booing the president? I mean, some people probably, right? But that's going to be a little bit of a warmer crowd, I would imagine. Also, who the fuck? I mean, you got to have some dumb money to do that. Okay, let's see here. Okay, very good. Question. Now that Colby Covington is basically at the end of his UFC run, do you think the heel gimmick was ultimately worth it for his career? That's a great question. I think there's probably a couple ways to look at that. I think one way would be that you'll say, well, what did it amount to? He got title shots. It's true. He even became an interim champ. That's true. But he had to leave his team. This vast swaths of the sport hate him. He burned a bunch of friendships, and he's not even all that rich or popular anymore. And what was really the value of it? I don't think that's a bad point. On the other hand, I think it's kind of a different question that I might ask, which is, if he hadn't done it, what would he have done? Which is not me necessarily endorsing it, but I think from his perspective, the question is, was there a delta? Was there enough of a change, a positive change, that if you hadn't done it, this wouldn't have gone as far, even if it ultimately didn't go far enough? He'll probably say it was worth it. It really is just a question of like, what are you willing to? How are you totaling up the costs? How are you totaling up the costs? Because if the costs are all the friendships you burned and you didn't even get a championship, then someone's going to say, well, then it was clearly not worth it. If the other argument is this was still necessary to get even as far as he did, there's another perspective. I tend to think it's all just about what your personal values are. And I mean, you kind of get the sense that like, if you're really just ready to burn your friendships over them, then that kind of tells you what your value system is. So I think for him, it'll probably end up being worth it. But, and then again, to not get on the White House card too, I think was a bit of obviously a pretty big blow. You're asking the question, do you think the heel gimmick was ultimately worth it? It wouldn't be for me. It wouldn't be for me. Only he knows the answer to that question, or you for you. It wouldn't be worth it for me to just completely set friendships that you've had, long-standing ones, on fire. And that, again, he didn't just like walk away from it like, oh, I can't be your friend anymore. Like, he was getting allegedly punched in the face by Jorge in the street. And, I've heard stories from guys who went to go interview Colby or Jorge at the gym one day, and they had to be let in and let out at different times, and it was acrimonious and it was ugly for the gym. Like, that would not be worth it to me. That would not be worth it to me. But people have different systems, value systems. All right, let's see this next one. Or hang on, this way. Yeah. What are your thoughts on Ariel openly endorsing Trump before the election? Did he? Is that true? At some point, that's me, Luke, have to take a strong stance on this guy. I don't understand what this argument is. Okay, hold on. From the Netflix shilling to supporting genocide and Trump, you have to recognize this isn't a good person. Okay. I have seen the suggestion that for some reason people are under this impression that I'm like afraid to get sideways with him. Let me just explain this very clearly. What would I be afraid of? First of all, I already spent a portion of my life sideways with him publicly on this channel. It's not like I haven't even done it before. I did it for a while. I had a talk with him and we ironed, I think, what we could out of it. And I was happy to walk away from it and under those terms. And that's what that was. But like, what is he going to take from me? He doesn't own anything that I do. What's he going to do? He's going to take MK away? He can't. He's going to take this channel away? He can't. He's going to take my Substack away? He can't. He's going to negatively affect it? He can't. I mean, I suppose we could have a beef and that we could have mutually assured destruction again or something like that. But like, he can't. I'm not in any way whatsoever afraid. Oh, I got you. He might. You know, this is a scary proposition. What is he going to do to me? What is he going to do to me? You know what I mean? Was he going to beat me up? He's going to take my girl. He's going to take all my money. Like nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. In fact, what I've noticed is every time I get into a beef, it ends up just like exploding my reach, and I put on like a gazillion subs or followers and shit like that. But the difference is I'm just not. I mean, I went nuclear on Coppinger because he came to my mentions. He went right into my mentions. And the thing that I really objected to without rehashing all of that is I am not at all going to be motherfucking lectured by somebody who works for Turkey about ethics or doing the job right or anything. And particularly given the way that ring has just utterly disgraced itself. And, you know, trying to, for example, in the Frank Warren fight between Dubois and what was the other? Was it Wardley? It was Wardley, right? And there was, even before tickets were on sale. Remember, that was the whole thing that caused it. Was that Ring went out there and what did they say? They said tickets aren't selling well, and they weren't even on sale. Like, you can't work at an outlet like that if you have an ounce of self-respect. That's my opinion. You can take it for what it's worth, but that's what I believe. Don't come to my motherfucking mentions trying to start problems with me. If you're that person, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay? That's kind of what I believe. But like, absent that, I'm not trying to get out here within the media circle itself necessarily trying to cause problems. Like, I'm like the way in which Pat McAfee, for example, has done some shit, which I've criticized him for to an extent anyway. But like, you know, he does a good show and he's clearly very talented. And at the end of the day, I don't really give a fuck about Pat McAfee and like what he does, you know, and he's obviously eminently more successful than I'll ever be. And I understand that too. But like, I'm just as an adult, I'm not going to beef with like a media colleague until I really kind of have to. Now, clearly, my views on Trump are very well known, right? They are very well known. And I said last week, I've done it before with Showtime and working at MK and then everything else. I kind of thought I could separate the two, but the reality is you can't. I don't think you can work for either the promoter or the broadcaster and then try and also say what you're doing is journalism. I think, Jesus. Godzilla's home. And you can do that job. I just don't think you can do it anymore. And I know I tried. So, you know, let he who's without sin cast the first stone. And I've tried, but my feelings on that are clear. And certainly, if you can't see that what has happened in Gaza is it's a genocide, but and Israel's an apartheid state, but it's a full-on moral atrocity, then I cannot trust your moral judgment. I don't take back any of these statements, but just outright, like, I'm trying to the best of my ability where possible to keep a little bit of the peace. That is not the same, and I hope you can understand this. That is not the same is like not inviting conflict into your life is the same as like, oh, what's he going to do to me? He can't do shit to me. He can't do shit to me. And you know it, and I know it. And he knows it too. Not that he's trying to, nor am I trying to the other way, but like, what is the theory here? What is the theory? What would I be afraid of losing in the event of a conflict? What would I lose? Nothing. I'd probably gain, to be honest with you. So like, I even have like an incentive to lean into it, except for the piece that I'm trying to keep in my life. Okay. I will make my individual criticisms as such. And I don't know if this is enough for everybody, but it's enough for me. I realize that like there has been a lot of dissension in the ranks more recently within the MMA community about Ariel. So for example, like after the Chimaev fight, when he went after Strickland, and then there was the Netflix fights, I think right after that. And then, he went after Aiden Ross this week. And then there was a bit of a back and forth between them, or I'm not sure how that all ended up. But, you know, I'm aware of all this. I've seen all of this, to say nothing of, you know, I'm not sure if he openly endorsed Trump. He might have. I didn't see that. But certainly I've seen that he's been very, very supportive of Israel. I could never be if my life depended on it. I could never be. But I think there is personally a little bit of wisdom in what kind of battles you're supposed to pick as you get older. And I think you have to be pretty selective about them when you have to do it. There might be a time where you can't, and it's just time to knuckle up. I've seen those times too. But in general, I'm interested in just having a little bit of sanity in my world. You know, it's kind of funny. After I've had numerous different media beefs, I don't know how other people feel about them. I personally never feel good after them. I actually always feel quite bad. Not that I feel bad for what I did per se, but like the anger that runs through me is bad for me. It's bad for my sleep. It's bad for it makes me feel like I've been poisoned. Truly, I mean that. So I'm just trying to limit that as best I possibly can, which is uneven. Guilty as charged, which is at times it might be selectively applied. There might be a reason behind that selectivity, but there's nobody in the industry. Like, this is the whole fucking point. The whole fucking point of what I'm doing. Guys, I am purposely eschewing. I don't know if you all have noticed this. I am purposely eschewing integration into the more which I had. I've kind of, oh my God, you got to stop. Jesus. Oh my God. Where was I? Where the fuck was I? I don't remember. Anyway, there's just a giant party out there. It's not my daughter. It's her, but it's a bunch of people just fucking having a moment. Apparently, Jesus. What was the last thing I was going to say on this? I forget. All right. I hope that was an answer. I don't know. Let's see here. I'm being told, by the way, by somebody who might be in the know here, that Ariel did not support Trump. He said he couldn't support Trump or Harris. See, that's the other part too. It's like people will be like, "Oh, did you see what so-and-so said?" And then I'll be like, "No, I didn't." And they'll be like, "Oh, they said that," I'll make up something, that Trump was Jesus. I'll be like, "Did they really?" And then I'll go and look at it and they'll be like, "Oh, I don't like Trump. And also I've been reading about Jesus." It's like, how did you put that together? That's actually what they said. Anyway, so this is the other part too. Like how much of it is, how much of the information that's being relayed to me in these kinds of incidents are accurate. Anyway. All right. Back to it. I'm currently on my way to the doctors to set up a proper mental health plan, which will likely lead to therapy and counseling. I'm hoping to deal with past traumas and build capacities that will lead to a fulfilling future. This sounds like a ChatGPT kind of question. Your past comments about this subject on this live chat have helped me make this decision. Okay, happy to hear that. What advice can you give that will help me be honest and consistent in this journey. This is a very, 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 very easy piece of advice. This is why you need to be able to talk to someone that you can actually talk to. If you don't tell this person the truth about what is going on in here or in here, you will not get better. You will not. There might be small ways they could improve this or small ways they could improve that, but it won't work. Like if there's deep problems and you can't tell them things that have happened to you or things that you feel because you're scared about it or you don't like the way you're going to look to a counselor or whoever, you will not get better. You will not get better. This is why people are like, oh, therapy doesn't work. I'm like, well, that's true. It's not 100%. That's definitely true. And people can go down paths with somebody who they thought might have been a good interlocutor as a mental health professional, and then it hits a dead end. All of that is true. All of that is true. At the same time, if you have a good one and you're unwilling to, I'm not saying bare every part of your soul, but the parts that are relevant to help them understand what the problem is, you are wasting your time. You have to be vulnerable. There is no other way. There is literally, through this process anyway, no other way. So again, you don't have to go in there and be like, I stole from my parents until I was 15. Like, I'm not saying that. I am saying that whatever you are working on that needs help, you need to answer honestly in the course of this, because it is, people think that like what's going to happen is you're going to tell the counselor something. They're going to have an insight, and then they're going to have something insightful to say back to you, and then maybe even give you some strategies to deal with it. And to be very, very clear, that is a thing that happens all the time. Okay. But one of the things that also happens is your ability, as they kind of press you on it, or at least, not coach you so much, but like, try to get you in the process of articulating how you feel. Once you begin to articulate how you actually feel through your own process of self-discovery, just that act of articulation can have its own form of healing, because it's almost like you're uncovering truth in real time. But that also requires you to be honest with that other person. So that's the only thing I can tell you, is there's no point in going whatsoever if you are not prepared to do it honestly. If you are, I think that there's a good chance you'll get something out of it. We'll do a couple more of these and we'll get to the paid portion. Have you guys ever considered having a segment, or possibly even part of the top 5 on MK, where you get Chuck's predictions for the upcoming fights? Seeing as he's not really on the Friday shows that are before the big fight weekend, I think it would be particularly good time filler on Mondays, where the previous weekend didn't have any UFC or relevant fights to discuss. I hadn't thought of it. I can ask him, see what he wants to do. I wouldn't be opposed to it. Ooh, I like this one. If you were 100% certain he'd stay on topic and not do his shtick, what kinds of questions would you ask Sean Strickland for a technique talk? Oh, man, that would be fucking great. I feel like I'd want to know his system for checking leg kicks so effortlessly with very little movement. I mean, that would be one for sure, but that wouldn't be my big one. My big one would be, dude, how did he fine-tune his system? Because he's got this Philly shell, right? But it's not a real true Philly shell, because what you'll notice is Floyd will often show almost the backside, not even almost, like definitively. He'll have the shoulder up here and then he'll roll it so that the punch comes off here. But you can't really do that in MMA, not to the same extent. And so what you'll notice is Sean's Philly shell there's pullback on the regular Philly shell too, but Sean's will have a big one. Or you'll notice that at times, if people want to, you'll see that they'll go to the body, then come upstairs, and the Philly shell will do this too, but it's the proportion and how much of it they use versus how little. He'll put a hand up, to like block traffic, punching traffic that comes over, and then he'll lean, and then how much to actually retreat versus to retreat and then fire back, which is a thing he's been working on more recently. I'd be very curious to talk about all the stages of, like, how did you make dude, Sean's style is, to me, like very, very interesting. That doesn't mean I'm like fully entertained by it, But dude, he's got an incredibly important insight, which is that like you don't need to master all of those sports or all of those different varieties offensively. If you get very, very good defensively at just pure neutralization, it takes away. It just you can have such a pronounced effect on the fight. Now, most people don't want to do that. They want to get better at offense than they do defense. And Sean's just a little bit different in that regard. Obviously, he had enough offense in the last one to make it work, although it was pretty close in the end. But you get the point. But to me, how he adapted this from boxing into something that was useful for MMA and like what all the stages were, and then in particular, like what went wrong at each stage, where he was like, okay, I definitely can't do that. When to bring this up, when to bring it down, when to parry with the rear hand, when to have it like all the different things that you would just have, like, because think about his style. Like his style looks to me, dude, this is why Sean is something of an accidental champion, because he got good enough to be one twice. But the thing about it is his style, he's like a dad in a garage. And I mean this as a compliment, where he just tinkers with shit. And like, this didn't work. And then he figures something out, and then this didn't work. But then he figures it out, and then that didn't work. But then he figured it out, and then he has a fight, and he wins. And he keeps going back to that. But then he has another fight, and then he loses. So he changes some of this. He's just been real iterative over time. And now he's got like a really good system to play with. I would love to know what he felt like the stages were of this, how he came to this conclusion to do this, why he does this. What he thinks the full advantages are, how applicable to other people it might be. Like, I'd have a million questions about that. That to me would be like the big one. Yeah, for sure. We'll do one more of these and then we'll get to the paid questions. Hey, Luke, while I realize both weren't at the same level of grappler, but both Volk and Ilia did start out their MMA/UFC careers being mostly wrestle grapplers, and over time became better known for their striking and boxing respectively. While I acknowledge Ilia beat Volk, I still would like to know who you personally think had the best integration of striking into their MMA game. Ilia's MMA boxing is definitely elite, but Prime Volk had a fuller overall striking game in addition to his feinting and stance switching. That's a great question. Who you personally think had the best integration of striking into their... I mean, Volk's game is a little more varied than Ilia's, and it's a little bit more MMA striking, whereas Ilia, to me, has more adapted boxing for MMA, right? Whereas Volk has a little bit more kickboxing / like, stance switch off the lead hook, which is like a very, very, you can see that in other sports, but it's a very, very MMA kind of thing. He's just got a little bit more of an MMA-centric focused striking game, whereas Ilia has just a striking game that he then applies, or a boxing game almost, to MMA. So I would say on that account, the integration or like the novelty of what Volk does is probably a little bit higher. But like, dude, I mean, head to head, or, even just in terms of pure raw, like not just quite like physical power, but like what he's able to do with it, it's just dramatic in the case of Ilia. I mean, it just really depends what you like, but they're slightly different in that regard. Let me do this one because it's a great one, and then we'll get to the paid questions. Let's see. Agree or disagree? Joe San and Chemo walking out with a giant cross like they did at UFC 3 would fit right into today's UFC. Dude, it would fit right into today's UFC. I don't know, but MMA, it's MMA to the bone. That's full on that's MMA. That's real MMA. Like where if you guys didn't see it, he's like carrying a giant cross on his back. I guess this giant fucking cross. And it's huge. And part of the novelty was that the interesting fact about it was that it wore him out in the fight. This motherfucker's like, farmer carrying a giant wooden cross on his back on his walk out to the octagon. And it's supposed to be like, compelling him to, I don't know. I don't know. The guy went to jail for murder, so whatever. But, or maybe it was worse than that. Maybe it was, was it rape or was it murder? I can't remember. In any event, those kinds of like, just dude, that's what MMA is all about. Bizarre atmospherics and then violence. That's the nature of MMA. Is just insanity, wildness, incredible violence, and then the beauty of sport underwriting it a little bit, you know? That's what makes it work. All right. With that out of the way, let's do this. Okay. If you have anything for me you don't have to, but if you would like to, it supports the channel, goes a long way. You can fire something into the super chat and we'll take a look from there. Let me have my my non-water. Look at this. Member for 31 months. Saul, MK all day. Thank you, my friend. Do you think Verhoeven will win a heavyweight boxing title? That's a good question. I mentioned this on Monday's MK. Boxing Gems, they do a really great job. They broke down it on the fight on tape. And their basic conclusion is that Rico came in with a really, really good, tricky game plan. But that the reason why Usyk won, let's just assume that the stoppage is clean. I don't think that it is, but let's just take it for the sake of argument. Let's just take it that it is. Usyk was slowly able to work himself into that by making adjustments throughout the course of the fight, particularly about who was circling and in what direction, and then some of the timing and some of the entries. It was a big deal. So the question is, like, a master boxer like Usyk was able to figure him out. Not every boxer is going to be able to do that, but how much of, like, now that there's some awareness about what he might try or something, you know, it's just 11 rounds. It's not a ton of tape, but it's some. How much might that be more plannable by the next opponent? I think he's talented enough to win one, but again, we go back to the same problem. You don't just have to beat another opponent. You have to beat the entire fucking system. And that is a very, very difficult thing to do. R.I.P. Harambe. 10 years since they shot that motherfucker. Dicks out for Harambe, right? Ross, thank you, my friend. Max writes, who is currently the biggest weight bully in the UFC? Oh, Morales. Is the right answer Morales or maybe RoboCop? RoboCop, maybe, could be up there, but it's Morales. Morales is gigantic. He's fucking gigantic. You know what I mean? And honestly, he's gigantic to the point where it's like, I think his window at welterweight is limited. It's limited in not so much right now because of his youth, but like, you know, if he does this to 32 or 33, is he really going to still be a welterweight? Maybe the answer, but like, I'd be surprised. Jackson Dart. I saw this, bro. You know what is so funny? I'm like so numb to that shit now. Just dealing with MMA, you know, I'm just like, I'm so numbed out where it's like that, like what he did in MMA is like just another day, like nobody, you know what I mean? Like, and maybe you think it shouldn't be, you know, you can have that debate, but Jackson Dart, for folks who don't know, is the quarterback for the New York Giants, and he introduced Donald Trump at a political rally and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, this has naturally fallen along partisan lines. It's been, some of the media is like, oh, this is terrible for locker room, you know, togetherness. I'm not sure what the word would be there, you know, to preserve the strength of the locker room. And others are like, you know, hey, it's the president of the United States. Anyone would have that honor. And it's like, well, you know, I think you guys kind of know where might fall on this one. I don't think there's any honor in being associated with the biggest thief that has ever been in this fucking office. I think it's actually quite a mark of shame. It'll be curious to see what happens to the UFC's brand long term for him being associated, or for them being associated with him. Because I mean, you know, I was looking at his polling numbers. Do I have them? I was looking at his polling numbers yesterday. Oh, you know what? I'm going to show you one because I do think I have it. Let's see. Where is that one? Download. Where is that? Oh, you know what? I want to get this. I want to show it to you. So I had one. I was looking at his numbers, and it's important to point. Here it is. Yes. Let me put this down. I'm going to show you a couple of these. Hang on. And then I will show you this one. Okay. All right. So check this out. Check these two out. So this is kind of the issue, right? Oh, for fuck's sake. Oh, whoops. Where the fuck do these things go, man? Ah, there it is. Okay. Sorry. Give me 1 second here. I know this is riveting fucking. Let's see here. Where did these go? Oh, I can't put them up because of what they are. Let me see if I can get them on the screen here. It won't recognize them. Let's see. Let's put that here. Yes, now I'll do it. Here. For crying out loud. What the fuck? Let's do that here. Here, check this out. This is Trump's approval numbers. Okay, this came out yesterday. It's a YouGov poll. Okay, check this out. You can't see this other line here. This was the Trump's first term, which was this color. Biden is the blue, and then Trump is in the red. So for the second term, right? So just to point out, 34 is his all-time lowest. This would actually match the number he got at the end of his term the first time after January 6th. So, I mean, understand he's now matching his worst ever poll number as a result of this. That's the first thing I want to point out. But the second one is Biden was at 42 at this exact same time in his administration, and Trump himself was actually higher at 38 the first time. Number one, look at how precipitously it has dropped. Biden's dropped precipitously as well, but then kind of rebounded here in this kind of second quarter here. This goes for the last, or I should say, since the first part of polling of the term. In any event, it rebounded a little bit, and Trump himself also rebounded the first time, but not this time. It completely collapsed. That's one of them. Okay, so that's one of them. I'll check out the other one here if you can for just a second. Let's do that. Oh, Jesus Christ. Let's do this. Now check this one out. Okay, look at this. Okay, I'm gonna blow this up too. Okay, so the blue line, the first one, the light blue, is the first Trump administration. This is now the second one. Dude, look at this drop. Look at that drop. Again, Trump had a drop in the first administration, but kind of rebounded, climbed quite a bit here. And then this is really when things begin to bottom out for him, and Trump won. Look at this. Look at this. This is a terrible level of polling. The only thing worse was Eisenhower at the end at 32% when he got out. This is basically 500 days into it. You've never seen, this is net approval, right? So obviously this would be the amount of people who support minus the people who don't. And it takes you to, he's almost at negative motherfucking 30. Not quite in this particular one, the YouGov poll. But like, understand this, the drop off is precipitous, and it has continued at a time when it's normally rebounded for other administrations. So like answering this question, getting back to it here on, or wherever it was, I forget the name of it, but you know, like, it's just going to improve. Like, he's just going to recover. He might certainly, if, I mean, even if the Strait of Hormuz opened today, it's going to take months, potentially even years at this point, for gas prices to come back down. And you know, if we run out of I mean, we haven't had shortages yet here in the United States, but like, imagine if that hits. So, you know, I don't know. I guess we'll see. What's the focus of your workout routine lately? Time. Do you still use your kettlebells or pull-up bar? Pull-up bar less so, but some. Kettlebells all the time. If I had more time to like lift hardcore, then I would, but I have like 30 to 45 minutes. I have to get in, get something, and get out. And it's not ideal, and I'm far from where I would like to be, but it's the only thing that I can scale. I can't scale anything else. Arsenal or PSG, and thoughts overall on Champions League this year? I hope Arsenal wins because of fuck PSG. Madrid had kind of a terrible season, to be honest with you. My friend is like a big time Arsenal fan. So I'm just really happy for them. Happy that they won the league. How long has it been? Like 20 plus years since they won, whatever it was. I mean, we're a long way from the Invincibles. I can tell you that. So I'm really happy for them. But I'm honestly, the games have been pretty good from the ones I've seen, but I've missed a lot. I've actually been pretty good about watching the NBA finals this year, or NBA playoffs, I should say. Do fear-mongering conservatives know the recent uptick to religiosity isn't Tucker Carlson clips, it's immigrants keeping the doors open? Did Zeke talk about this inconvenient truth for the GOP? I did not talk about that with him. Zeke Hernandez, who's a professor and scholar of immigration at the University of Pennsylvania, who has been writing about some new studies he's been doing, which I've spoken about on my political channel. I'll save that for those who want to go see it. But this has, to me, always been the part that made sense for them to be conservative. This is why, like I've said to you guys before, like, dude, Colombia is a very conservative country. You go to like people live in mostly apartments in a lot of these major cities. Everyone's apartment complex I went to had a giant nativity scene. It's remarkable. They do priests doing prayers on television, and you know what I mean? Like the separation between, I realize that the separation between church and state, as it's described by the way in which we use it, is not necessarily a concept that even other democracies employ in the same particular way. But like whatever separation we have, they have none of that. They have none of it. It's wild. But like that always, to me, this is why when it's like, dude, they're Catholic and or Christian. More evangelicals are happening, but a lot of them are Catholic. They are family oriented. These are God-fearing people. These would be the kind of people that you would imagine conservatives would want. This would fit with them much more naturally in a number of different ways than it would for a lot of other political, party modeling. And this satanic panic of deportation just completely undercuts what could be a huge win for them. But they don't want to take it. They don't seem interested in having solidarity in the ranks. What they want is an ethno state. I've seen Nick Fuentes talk about this. He basically admits he wants what Israel has. He obviously is, deeply anti-Semitic and highly critical of Israel, which, I share at least some of those criticisms of Israel, probably not all of them, but probably many of them. But the point I'm trying to make is he had admitted, I saw on one of his videos where he was like, they don't quite have an ethno state. They have this problem of Palestinians that they can't seem to figure out. But what they want is an ethno state. He's like, I want that. And I just think you have to decide as a person whether you want a flunky, shitty, poorly operationally run ethno state, or you want a dynamic, vibrant market economy that has a creed as its binding between entities. Because I've seen what that looks like versus what the other looks like, and I'll never pick the ethno state. It'll never happen. I miss Rumble Johnson. Shame we didn't get to see the John Bones Jones fight. He brought excitement with all that power, and we've yet to see someone that devastating in that division. Light heavyweight is just stale these days. It's true, although he was all the way back at welterweight, but he was we got to see a couple of those Cormier fights, and those were pretty great. So we saw what he did to Ryan Bader too. That was also pretty great. He had some phenomenal moments, but you're right. We got robbed a little bit, and obviously he died pretty early. And light heavyweight is losing members. I saw Johnny Walker's going up to heavyweight on that Belgrade card. Who else? Alexander Rakic is going up, and then Whitaker's now going up from 85. So, I think some divisions are really, really great, but obviously I think that light heavyweight has suffered from the lack of guys like Rumble, who was not a D1 guy, but wrestled collegiately and had huge power. We could use a lot of guys like that. I saw Mighty Miles explaining the mousetrap to GSP. Turns out the magic trick this whole time was beating out the elbows. Who knew? Yes. He showed it to me. He put me in it one time in the SiriusXM studio, and I got to feel it. And yeah, it's a dynamic position. He was quite good at it. Mm-hmm. Thoughts on the other Yitler being at the White House? Who the fuck is this? Oh, are these the rumors that Benjamin Netanyahu will be at the White House event, the UFC White House event? Those are just rumors. Now, I'm not saying that that's true or not true. I'm treating it as a rumor until it's otherwise confirmed. I would imagine that probably won't happen. It seems to me a little bit it's not like I think highly of Trump's discretion, but I would think even less highly of it in that circumstance. I mean, if he did that, I could not think of something that would make it more automatically disqualifying, even for people who want to watch that thing, than doing that. It might be the worst thing he could do for PR, honestly. I don't think they'll do that. Thoughts on streaming versus owning physical media? Own where you can, man. Own where you can. Okay, I'm being told Benjamin Netanyahu is reportedly going to be a UFC White House event. Where are those reports coming from? That's what I want to see. Where is that report from? That to me seems impossible. Would you invite a guy who's wanted by the fucking ICC for war crimes to a fucking spectacle like this? I mean, dude, who could defend? Dude, and I'm being serious. Who could defend an event where he did that? Who could do it? I would love to see it. How do you defend the butcher of Gaza being at your event and say, well, everything here is just, this is a great normal event? Dude, that would be fucking gross. I would need a shower after that. Honestly, that's the kind of thing that would make me get out of covering the sport altogether. I'm not even doing a bit. That would be hideous, morally hideous, and so indefensible. It would be a stain on MMA for the rest of its existence. I really, really hope that's not true. I'm really disappointed no women on the White House. Is that because of Trump? Dana White says no. Dana White says they tried to get a female fight on there, and it just didn't work out. I suspect there's some truth to that. I'm convinced corruption was the reason Rico versus Usyk was stopped, but not stop it on the why not stop it on the first knockdown? Why not let the judges steal the fight? Well, that kind of like makes the coordination attempt that you're identifying a little harder to come by. The reason why is he gets knocked down, he gets up, they spit the mouthpiece out, and then he's just covering up and basically not moving. That was the reason why he jumped in. But you would really only do that for someone who's like an amateur or, a low-level pro, which I get. This is a second pro boxing fight, but we're talking about the motherfucking king of kickboxing. It was stupid. Love from Canada, LT. Heading to DC for a week in November. If you had an Airbnb in DC, what are a couple of decent neighborhoods to stay for a week? Already have your restaurant recs. A couple of decent neighborhoods. DuPont Circle would be a big one. Obviously Georgetown, but it's probably going to be expensive. If you're looking for something a little cheaper, you might want to try Navy Yard. It can get a little wild and rowdy down there, but it's not terrible. It's, but I wouldn't do that. Capitol Hill East would be a good spot. There's some other spots in Northeast. I don't know if there are Airbnbs around Edgewood or Brookland or Noma. Noma would be a good one. Noma would be a really good one. Petworth, depending on where you are. If you're close to the metro, I would do it. If not, it's a little sketchier. What else? I mean, obviously Palisades or Chevy Chase or anything in the upper Northwest is going to be money. But if it was me, I would really recommend. You know what? You could do Woodley Park. That would be a good one. Anything close to a metro is what you want to do. I'm telling you, just take my word for it. The metro works now. It's good. It's reliable. It's, for the most part, it's pretty safe. And it's just much easier to have that as an access point for going to do shit than just staying in an apartment like, oh, we're at a really nice place in in upper Northwest, but it's a mile drive to the metro. Man, fuck all that. I wouldn't do that. Okay, so I'm being told Times of India, which is deeply unreliable, and other media running with this story after streamer Aiden Ross reported he told UFC he couldn't attend if Netanyahu was going. No confirmation either way from White House or UFC. Man, they bring him to that shit. Not Aiden, but they bring Benjamin Netanyahu to that thing. How could you defend it? How could you defend it? You couldn't. You would have a moral obligation to not defend it. Take on Walker and Rakic going to heavyweight to take on Tybura and Ilia. Improvement to the weight class overall? I think so. Is the weight class movement a plus for light heavyweight and heavyweight with 3 middleweights going up too? Yeah, I mean, I think some movement, some freshness is going to be better. I think Walker and Rakic in particular are two of the bigger light heavyweights that at least it's worth kicking the tires on going to heavyweight. Now, normally I'm like, well, if you've got problems in one division, you're just going to carry them to the next. But heavyweight is so shitty that there actually is like you can get graded on a curve there. So that actually might be the one exception to this. Who do you think would win in an MMA and kickboxing fight between Rico and Poatan? I mean, at this point, Rico. At Poatan's prime, I guess Rico's still bigger. Also, who has more prestigious accolades in kickboxing, Poatan or Rico? I don't know if Rico was a double champ, but I think his run at heavyweight is considered to be, one of the most dynamic runs you'll see. That's a better question for like a kickboxing expert. Favorite city in the world, New York. If we're talking outside of the city, outside of the country, it would be Madrid. Mike Perry has done more. The question is, has Mike Perry had the best career post-UFC or Francis? Mike Perry has had the best career post-UFC for brand restoration and or improvement, whereas Francis has had, I think, a little bit of that maybe, although some of that got hurt in the Joshua fight, but he has had a more lucrative run. Not that Perry hasn't had a lucrative run, but it's not been on the level of Francis. But Francis's stock, as to me, people are like, well, how good is he? And he left, and we'd love to see him back. But like, what does it mean when he's fighting this donk or that donk? Like, he's the lineal heavyweight champion, but like, where is he now in this division? And people still might be intrigued, but it's not like his name has like elevated. Whereas with Perry, it's like fucking crazy high. Hell yeah, Luke, get that CNN money. They're not paying me. They're not paying me, at least not yet. I'll disclose if they ever do, and I don't know that I would ever take it. I suppose it would. I don't know. I don't know how that would work. It would depend on what kind of editorial limits they would ask for. If they asked for any, I suppose would be a problem. But I'm not getting paid. I'm doing all of this for free. So to be very clear about that. Do you think Gane will be too big for Poatan? I think he's going to be bigger and tougher than folks realize. I feel like going from middleweight to heavyweight is a huge jump. Gane is a lean 250 that can move quick. This is what I mean. Gane is used to being light on his feet and circling for 25 at heavyweight. Poatan is big, and you're like, oh, well, he can punch hard and he can take a big punch. Probably all true. How else are you going to be able to move? How's his cardio going to be affected? Those are the biggest issues that I have. What's the speed difference going to be like? This is why that fight, dude, the co-main event to me is by far the most intriguing fight. I like Ilia's, oh, you might be more entertained in that fight because Ilia is going to just, knuckle Justin into the dirt in all likelihood. Okay, fair enough. But just in terms of like problem solving and how the puzzle pieces fit together, I feel like that co-main event is one of the best fights UFC is putting on all year. Thoughts on Ashley St. Clair's left-wing pivot and now frequent guest on left-wing shows? I'm curious to hear her out. I cannot watch her videos. I cannot watch her put on makeup constantly and then talk about this stuff. It's like, is there another way to do this that's like less distracting? And what are we doing? And also, like, I don't begrudge anyone who has a moment of clarity or a change. But like to go from like, I'm having Elon Musk's kid and you're all in on this to now being like, oh, they're all grifters and scammers. I know so many folks who've done that right-wing pivot and have meant it, and it's been lasting enough to know it's real, or at least it can be real. I've also seen people backtrack the other way too. So if she's got interesting and valuable information about how the right media ecosystem operates or about malfeasance that she witnessed, this is a valuable thing. And people having second thoughts about, right-wing or Trump support, I think is an important thing as well. But I'm still a little bit in the wait and see mode on all of it. Top 5 best times to mow the lawn. When I'm not on the air. Luke, out of curiosity, what was your experience during the USA 94 World Cup? So my parents were divorced. I was here in D.C., and my dad lived over on F and 3rd Northeast. If you look at that on the map, it's not far at all. It's pretty close to Union Station. And my brother and I he had a friend from elementary school that we had still known. His name was Derek, and Derek lived over on by Lincoln Park. And he would either come to our house or we would go to his house. And so he came to our house and we watched, I remember the USA Brazil game, because we were like, well, this is going to go real fucking poorly. And I remember that I think they only lost like 1-0, or it didn't end up being a blowout. I think Brazil still won in the end. But we just watched it at home. We didn't go to games. I don't think, obviously we're not in DC anyway, but but we definitely were. It was definitely the first time that big time soccer, and like Tony Meola came out of that, and Alexi Lawless came out of that, and they're still, Alexi certainly is still on TV, and Tony Meola I think is still doing. I think Tony Meola is doing stuff for CBS Sports Golazo. Like, these dudes became national heroes after this, so it was a big deal. This was also the same summer where I began to watch UFC stuff. So that was a big summer for me, summer of '94. Does this fight do anything beyond a payday? Conor beating a 155er at 170 means nothing at welterweight, and Max gains what besides money? Fun fight, but feels pointless. Well, he gets revenge, number one, and a win over the biggest fucking name in the sport. Big money too on top of it, so that's another part. But dude, like, I actually think this is a fucking huge fight. People are saying that Max is going to run over him, and maybe he does. But it's a huge fight for Max. Or sorry, for Max too, but for Conor. Dude, one more time. Conor hasn't been seen in 5 years, hasn't got a win in almost 7. And the last time that we saw him, he had a catastrophic leg injury. Not a bad one. Catastrophic. Straight up catastrophic, to the point where he couldn't even return, because remember, it was believed anyway that he was using PEDs to help himself heal, which I don't have a problem with at all. Like, that's how serious this was. What is that guy going to look like? Who the fuck knows? This is, to me, not a tune-up fight, but they're giving him as much as they can in that direction anyway. You're fighting a 145er who recently moved to 55. We're going to make him go to 170 to see what he can do up there. But it's like, man, it's tough. It's tough. Real tough. LT, you fucking killed it on CNN this morning. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. 2 questions. If you weren't able to have a child with your wife, would you have adopted? Probably. And what's the appropriate time to cut one's lawn? When I'm not on the air. Yeah. Hi, Luke. In the UK, the Labour government has collapsed. Yes, I've paid some attention to that. However, there is a left-wing alternative offered by the Green Party. Are there any left-wing alternatives to the Democrats in U.S. politics? In a smaller way, yes. Working Families Party has done some good work. Green Party has done some good work here locally. DC Statehood Party has done some good work. You might also argue, depending on your perspective, it seems to me that it's very hard to argue that Zohran Mamdani is doing a bad job in New York. How much of a good job you think he's doing is up for debate. I think he's doing a pretty good one, but okay, fair enough. It's up for debate. But you could also say then, therefore, the Democratic Socialists of America are having some kind of an impact. But the reality is the corporate, when people call the Democrats and Republicans a corporate duopoly, it really is so true. There are meaningful differences between them, obviously, but the size and the scope and the architecture, and then the slavish need to honor the corporate donor system through the Democratic Party is so overwhelming, and it's so powerful that you can get these other parties who in smaller ways can do stuff at various points, and that's not nothing. But the ability to break through and stop the corporate duopoly is really the biggest challenge, whether it's for the right or the left. Thoughts on the DOJ investigating E. Jean Carroll? Yeah. You think that'll have a chilling effect on assaults reported or be looked at as an isolated Trump thing? Also, thoughts on Tallarico versus Paxton. Tallarico should win that one because Paxton's like the worst candidate imaginable. Paxton is corrupt in ways. I mean, the guy is a philanderer, self-dealer. I mean, arguably a criminal. He is the absolute. I mean, just he is truly. If you're voting for Paxton, you're voting on a pro-corruption agenda, straight up. Like, it's not. There's not even another way to look at that. And I've seen what some people say, being like, "Well, I really disagree with Tallarico, dude." You asked me like what were conditions I would vote for Republican if the roles were reversed. Maybe I would sit it out. But if the roles were reversed and I had to vote for someone, you cannot put into power the pro-corruption party under any circumstance, or the pro-corruption candidate. And Paxton is the pro-corruption candidate. Straight up, that is what has powered his career. And you don't have to take my word for it. His own fucking party charged him with it. His own party in Texas charged him with it. I mean, just listen to the other Republicans in the state. Don't take my word for it. What was the other part of the question? Oh, on E. Jean Carroll. Yeah, dude, the Todd Blanche and the Department of Justice, he needs to be disbarred. And if and when this ever comes to an end, he needs to be charged. The Department of Justice has been decimated. It's lost 25% of the lawyers who were running it. And the ones who are left are running kangaroo court, cockamamie bullshit schemes that luckily now can't hold up. There's I think it's the Gothenburg Institute of Sweden. It could be another one. They run this. They've been running it since 1950. They've been running. They keep track of all democracies worldwide, all democracies, U.S., France, Australia, the whole 9 yards, and then they grade them over time. This has been going on since 1950, and you've never heard of it until recently. What was the name? What was the name of it? I want to get the name. I've been reading the study that they put out. They put out one every year, and the last one made a big difference. It is. Here we go. VDEM, V-Dem Institute. It's from Sweden. And what they write in the most recent report is that for any democracy, for any year, any democracy since 1950, we lost 18 points in our measurement. That's the most by any democracy on record since 1950 in a single year. Now, Hungary had fallen further, but it took an incremental amount of time to do it. The precipitous drop. And what they note in that report is two things have actually saved the USA in terms of it could have dropped even further. One was that election integrity seemed to hold up for the most part from what they could tell, and that the federal courts and that the Supreme Court, while in certain cases bending to authoritarian will, nevertheless put up enough resistance. Again, it's not about just like, oh, we're doing the president's say or we're not doing the president's say. It's about whether or not you're upholding existing constitutional law. And to what extent you're resisting pressures from the executive, from another branch of government to do that. Like you have independent stake in the game. What they were pointing to was the courts and then the elections in the United States have still held up pretty well. But what they also cautioned in the report is those are going to be the next battle lines. They're going to go after those next, is election integrity and then the court systems generally. And if you actually look at what like Bukele has done in El Salvador, and you can, there's a number of different ways you could pick it, rearranging the laws or changing the laws to undermine what the courts could do, to say nothing of the election integrity in any of those various places. They're going to go after those next. If and when any of this comes to an end, all of those lawyers need to be disbarred and they all need to be prosecuted, period. The Department of Justice, it doesn't have any credibility anymore at this point, but now it's got negative aura. Like going at, I mean, this is why women don't go after their accusers. She won handily in court. Nikita Hand wins handily in court. And now look at Connor. He sells out T-Mobile. He's about to be returned and celebrated. That's going to be a big deal. And here is Trump. He loses to her terribly because the evidence in that case was very strong. And now he's just going after her because he wants to go after his political enemies. And the Department of Justice is now his personal law firm. Yeah. A while back on this live chat, you showed off a handheld barbell you can put weight on that's meant for the wrist and forearms. Do you mind saying what the name of it is? I would, but I don't have that information in front of me. I'll get it for next week. I forget. I don't have the thing in front of me. Did you watch the Back for Blood event? Thanks, always. I did not. Well, I saw highlights. From it, but it looked memorable. Why does nobody bring up that Rogan feeling like he needs multiple former SEALs to protect him is incredibly diluted? I don't think that it is. How many did you see in studio? When I was there, he had 3 of them, maybe 4. 3 or 4 of them. I'm not sure. 3 or 4 of them. They were all very friendly. They were all huge. I would imagine he gets death threats all the time. I don't think that's diluted at all. I'll be honest with you. Yeah. I suspect he might need them. I don't know that he does, but of all the things to criticize him about, that would be the last thing I would bring up. Okay. the sourcing on this is not great. I'm going to assume that the people running the show are not so dumb as to imagine doing this, but I guess we'll see. Dreading the lead up to the White House card. I'm not. It'll be conservative media heads acting like they know about UFC. Oh, that'll definitely happen. How do you think the lead up will be, and do you think they'll get a sizable amount of new fans? I don't know if they're going to get a lot of new fans. I mean, they're going to do a huge viewership number, to be clear. It's going to be massive, like massive. They, will they beat 17 million? I don't know how that's going to go. I don't know, but they'll do a big fucking number. Like, I know that they'll be happy in the end. Because again, you're getting MMA media, sports media, political media. There's nothing UFC could basically that they could do that could generate that kind of hype. It just doesn't exist. They're getting juiced by the power of the federal government. Like, what other thing could they do to get that kind of juice? I don't even know what that would be. Again, there's probably within the current roster anyway. The left-wing people are completely turned off by it. I think centrists, it's probably mixed. Many of them probably don't care. And then obviously the right probably is very, very happy about it. As you can imagine, it would mix in those different directions. I just think the UFC is just making a fundamentally different pitch to audiences now. It's not I know Dana is getting out there now and he's saying, oh yeah, we don't care if you're far left or you're far right, but no one believes this. Like, nobody fucking believes this. I don't know what Dana's personal politics are, but it hardly matters. If you give Trump a laundering service after January 6th, if you give him the kinds of political rallies, which are his events turned into, right? He gets his own entrance music. He gets his own entrance. Commentators are talking him up. Fighters are talking him up. He's constantly on camera. Crowd during that time anyway is going fucking berserk for him. If you were a political campaign, where could you spend money to replicate that? You could say, oh, your own political rallies, but that's not the point. This is ostensibly all those people are there, not even necessarily to see him. They're ostensibly there just to watch the fights. This is the added bonus. So I'm saying among a crowd of people that could be, if not convert the viewers at home, right? This profound magnification and glorification. Where could he go to spend money to get that? And the answer is nowhere. And they did this over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it has alienated people who think like me for the most part. It has brought in a new class of people who either don't care or are sympathetic to it. It has changed the composition of the fan base. It has changed the composition of the sport. So like, if you bring in new people who aren't like that, they're going to figure out real fucking quickly that this is not the sport for them. To say nothing of what is essentially amounted to a pro-slur speech policy that the UFC has instituted, which they then use to then sell the fights. For ordinary sports fans, this is going to be largely untenable. For a certain kind of fight fan, it's going to be great. And again, you don't have to have all the sports fans in the world either. Like, you don't need all of them. But like, this is what I mean. Look, UFC is going to have a big summer. This White House card is going to be big. Connor's return should be big. Islam fighting, I don't know if it's going to be huge, but like, that's a big deal when the number one pound for pound guy in the sport competes. These are all big summer, I think, at a bare minimum. But there are now structural and fabric changes to who is in the sport that are going to make attracting and then retaining the kinds of fans who aren't already part of this a much more difficult proposition than, say, 2015 when Ronda's bringing all these young women to the sport. It's just not, that's just not the way the UFC runs. They're trying to go out there and they're trying to tell the world, hey, this is a sport for everybody. It's not. It's absolutely not. That is so fucking not true. And you don't have to take my word for it. People just who are not automatically sympathetic to that ideology, they've either left or they're in the process of leaving. Luke, just want to give you Trump's cognitive test. Pick any, what? Okay, pick any number. All right, multiply times 9. Okay, divide by 2. Okay, add 1324. Okay, okay. And let's see, what would that be? That would be, let's see. Do I get to use a pen and a paper? One more time here. Pick any number. Okay. Okay. You can't. Well, you kind of can't. Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's just say you could. Okay. Fine. All right. Okay. So that'd be. Okay. So that would be. Let's see. Back of the envelope math here. 476, but I'd have to double check the math. My handwriting's not great. All right. Something strange to me as a Canadian is the way Americans root for billionaires and companies like sports teams. It's so strong with UFC Dana. It's not just strong with them, it's strong in general. There's just a lot of people, like when there is a dispute between the players and the owners in, like I have to say, American football or the MLB or something, you know, they'll, if there's not lockouts anymore, but like I grew up in the era of lockouts. There'd be lockouts and they would almost always take the side of the owners. You know, these players are rich enough, blah, blah, blah. Like you kind of get this thing already. Luke, did you see PFL's John Martin mention that Joe Schilling is no longer with PFL, but not the guy who fouled him? Wasn't clear if it was the end of his contract or if he was cut. Bad look? I don't think so. I mean, here's the thing. It didn't look to me like Joe really wanted to be there after that. And, you know, he'd been off for a while. It was weird to see him back. It didn't, I didn't quite get it. Hold on, let's see here. 1 second. Let me see something. All right. What was I out here? Oh, okay. Yeah, it didn't look like he really wanted to be there. It didn't look like he really wanted to be there. So I don't know. I don't really know what to say about that. That was a strange one. Oh, what am I doing? I added up this wrong. Hold on. Now I'm bitter at my own self. Hold on. So no, the answer is, I mean, it doesn't really work, but 608. 608 is the right answer. All right. Even that's not right because the math doesn't really work with the number I picked, but okay. Luke, missed a few chats. What's your expectations and hopes for Real Madrid next season? Any Galactico you want? Can I be honest? I haven't even thought about it, bro. I haven't even thought about it. My friend wants Madrid to get rid of Vinny. You know, who the fuck knows what's going to happen with Tchouaméni and Valverde, and I mean the whole thing is a nightmare. I haven't given it considerable amount of thought. I apologize. I should have, but I haven't. Luke, for channel Substack members, would you ever consider going back to live score controversial MMA boxing bouts? So, for example, live reaction to final score to Hagler versus Leonard. Yeah, time permitting, I would love to. There's a lot of stuff I want to do, but I've got to cut some shit out of my life in order to be able to make time for it. Per rumors of the arch douchebag of Israel is at UFC White House. How will the fans react? I know the elites will glaze, but what about the peasants and the actual fans? I mean, I don't know. I would imagine it would be a major turnoff to a lot of people. I mean, I think if you travel to DC and you're at the Ellipse, that would not be disqualifying. I mean, you already spent all that money to go. They probably would just watch. But it would yield, I think, an enormous amount of negative press for UFC. I'll be honest. I'm going to go mark down as like, I would be surprised if they do that. I really would. I don't think that they would do that. LT, I'm glad Buckley spoke out about the welterweight division inactivity. It's frustrating that the best division has 0 title or number 1 contender fights booked this year. What do you think caused it? UFC in general. Someone had run some math. I saw it on social media where they looked at how often a ranked fighter is actively competing, and that number has, I forget what the original number was, but it has declined precipitously now, where a ranked fighter competes much less often than they used to, I think relative to maybe 10 years ago, something like that. And so it's not your imagination. Like, how many ranked fighters are you getting to watch more often? Not nearly enough. For the last few live shows, it seems like people are trying to pin you against Ariel. Yes, of course they are. I don't think these guys were around before. Not really sure why there's a push to talk about Ariel on here. Listen, some people have issues with him. A lot of people don't like me, and there's naturally questions about it. I'm not really going to dodge the questions. I just hope people can understand that, like, I've seen people be like, oh, you're afraid to speak out about him. Like, why would I? For what? I mean, I don't have a desire to, like, go fight with someone, but, like, who in the industry is going to take anything from me? I have built my own system to be, like, free of these problems. You know what I mean? Like, even if, like, again, God forbid, but, like, let's say even if MK ended, I will make enough money. I'll be fine. I don't want that. I'm not actively looking for it. That would be bad, sure. But, like, is that going to bankrupt me? It's not going to bankrupt me. You know, I am protected. Luke, have you ever heard of what the National Design Studio is doing under the executive branch? Video by the Dre Dossier, building parallel gov websites and funneling federal user data to the executive branch. This would be new to me, but I will take a look. What is it called? The National Design Studio. Let me make a note of this. Studio. What is it called? The Dre Dossier. Okay, got it. I'll take a look. Luke, you never responded to my email. Oh my fuck, how did I miss it? Curious to hear your thoughts on my UC Davis med school ceremony. Oh fuck, I did see this one. Search HS or H Salama. Okay, I will do that. I got a million things going on, but I will do that. Please have New York Rick as a guest host on Friday. No, I got Jed tomorrow. Jed will be on the show tomorrow. King Green mentioned Sean adopted the shell stance while training with a lot of black fighters who use the 52 blocks technique in prison. Is that true? Is that true? That'd be interesting. I hadn't heard that, but that'd be interesting. Odds we get Bappa as a MK Friday co-host once. Never say never. Honestly, that'd be kind of funny. I've been mulling over sharing this. I've been in an intensive outpatient mental health program for 4 months. The best decision of my life. For people seeking help, it seems scary, but it will change your life. Hope will change your life. Hope feels nice. What a wonderful message this is. What a wonderful message this is. What a wonderful message. I'm so glad to see this. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you for the donation. It's very generous. And you know, Dano has been out there being like, "Oh, young men should not," you know. I'm with him on the idea of, you know, every detail about your life does not need to be made available for public consumption. Fair enough. But if you are in need of mental health counseling or someone to talk to, or you need to share something because it's weighing on you and it's affecting how you think about yourself and how happy you are, you should do that. You should do that. Nothing gets better in secrecy, or very little anyway. My late dad and myself got a lot of joy from your commentary. For that, I thank you, Luke. Well, thank you. I appreciate your work politically and in the sport we love. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. When is bedtime or Guru going to be on MK? I mean, probably never. I hadn't thought about it. I've thought about using some YouTubers, but, like, you know, I came up as, like, traditional media, or such as you want to call it, that in MMA, and I'm sort of more attached to that. I suppose, you know, never say never with that kind of stuff too. Shout out to Minneapolis finest Mr. Floyd, 6 years sober. Is this like an anti-George Floyd joke? Okay. Your appearance on CNN was excellent, this person writes. Killing the game. Thanks. It wasn't very long, but thanks. With the pay ceiling and many other sports opportunities, heavyweight and light heavyweight divisions are only going to get worse. Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's a way around that if the UFC does actively more recruiting, but if they just kind of wait to receive the sport, I think that's where the problems begin to emerge. But yes, it's always going to be an uphill battle given that those types of athletes just get drained out for more lucrative. And frankly, it's not even just more lucrative. Like, is your high school going to have an MMA program? Probably not. But your high school is definitely going to have a football team, I understand a lot of focus has to be on the Substack to grow it, but is there any update on a members-only live chat or something like that? Yes. Well, there should be. There hasn't been much members-only content the last while. It's a good question. That's a good question to think about. A members-only live chat. Let me think about that. Okay, first things first, I'm going to say the same thing because folks on Substack want more and the political channel wants more, like everybody wants more. I have to cut things out to make time for other things. So I'm not really sure what that's going to be just yet, but my goal is by the start of 2027, and obviously before that too, but to have it fully in motion by then. I've got to just cut some stuff out. So I'm kind of in the process of sorting that. I think with that, it will allow me to lean into the properties I have. I'm doing too much. I have 2 YouTube channels. I have a podcast 2 days a week. I've got this one. I've got the Substack. I've got XFC commentary. I can't do any of it well because it's pulled in so many parts, and I recognize that, and it's really not fair to those people. And I think the best thing to do is narrow the scope of what I am doing. Oops, excuse me. Even Daddy Fury said Rico was exhausted. Usyk likely stops Rico in 12th if it continued. Just saying. And if Rico had stopped him, if Usyk had stopped Rico in the 12th, that would have been honestly worse for Rico than what happened because he's now seen as something of a sympathetic figure who was done wrong versus if he just gets rocked. People would still have a lot of nice things to say about his performance, but now he's also got this plausible out, Man, that mention of Rumble reminded me of the UFC matchmaking him up with Tommy Spear when Spear was coming off of Tough. If any donks haven't seen it yet, check it out. Oh, yeah. He collapsed him against the fence. He just sleeps up against the fence. Is there ever going to be a 12 Downing Street UFC event? Probably not. No, I don't suspect there will be. LT, great job on CNN. Seems like the panel was dismissive when you were discussing what young men want in a candidate and Platner was brought up. Could just be how I saw it, though. I got contacted by another producer from CNN today being like, they liked my advocacy. I have misgivings about Platner, which I've said on this channel many times, but in general, he's better than fucking Janet Mills and certainly going to be better than Susan Collins. And, I understand that people might have some misgivings about him. I don't really buy his tattoo story, just to be very clear, but given the stakes of what he is advocating for and what we're up against, I think that a vote for him is quite understandable. I don't live in Maine. It's up to the people of Maine. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is they were telling me they don't have people on, they didn't quite say it this way, but the way it was kind of communicated was that there are not a lot of perspectives internal at CNN that are, the way it was explained to me was they think internally all the people who work at CNN are going to have a degree of surprise if Graham wins. And I'm like, why would you look at the fucking polling? Why would you be surprised? And that someone who could articulate a vision of people like this is why people are interested in him, even if I'm not the biggest surrogate. Apparently that's missing. So LT, who's your favorite late night host? It was Conan. To me, Conan and Jon Stewart are the gold standard in my teen years. So sad about Colbert. I got Colbert getting forced off the air because of Donald Trump sucks. But Colbert's show also sucked. Can we be honest about that? But back in the day, it was definitely Conan O'Brien. Conan O'Brien, when I was in college, was the fucking best. It was completely unhinged and it was great television. And that was back in the peak of Triumph the Insult Comic Dog, Luke, there has been a number of tenured 205ers moving up to heavyweight who passed the eye test and have some real but limited technical ability. Think this is purposeful by UFC to oust the fat slobs? Yes, possibly. Yes. Also, I just think they're trying to see what they've got with these guys, but on both ends. Your thoughts on Adrian Broner and Dean the Great? Adrian Broner looks fat as Christ. Fat as hell. It's just an expression. Everyone chill. And people are surprised by it. I'm not. It's very easy to gain weight, especially as you get older. And then Dean the Great. What did he get? He got arrested for something or some terrible crime. I only hear about him if someone is punching him in the face or he's being charged with crimes. Not going great. How does this deal matter? Trump set in place matter if Israel just does what they want anyway? Are we actually going to stop sending them money? Well, that's more of an issue for Congress. And we would need new people in Congress to really make that possible. But there is no deal. I know that there was announced a deal before I went on air, or at least they were getting close. It's a restatement of an old Iranian deal, which the Americans didn't want to accept. So unless they're just backing off many of their key provisions, there is no deal. Blue Shorts just got back. He's a friend of Othello's. I know him. Just got back from a trip to Morocco. Have you two ever had the pleasure of meeting Blue Shorts? Yeah, dude. I've known Blue Shorts for a long fucking time. Blue Shorts is a guy who works at, I guess I don't think he still works. He used to work at the local sports radio station. It used to be WJFK, and now it's 106.7 The Fan. Same station, just they changed. They flipped formats and their name changed a little bit. And he was doing promotions for them for the longest fucking time. I'm not sure what he does now, but yes, I've known Blue Shorts a long time. I saw Blue Shorts at one of Othello's daughter's parties maybe like a year or two ago. Alexis, Texas for Senate. I bet she's got your vote, horn dog. Luke, I've been interviewing amateur fighters and many want to go pro after just 5 to 6 fights. With coaches stressing experience, why do so many want to rush to turn pro? A, because you can get paid. Maybe not that much, but you can get paid. And B, none of them seem to understand the value of development. They all want to rush development. They're not interested in development. They're interested in just graduating. It's like going to college to learn versus going to college to get enough credit hours to graduate. And they just want to get enough credit hours. And that's why many of them will fail. If tomorrow the rules in MMA became radically changed, such that it was a fight to the death, surely most fighters would retire. But who would you think would still compete? My guess, John Jones, Robbie Lawler, Josh Neer. That's a crazy one. Some of the Dagestanis, I bet, too. If it's a fight to the fucking death. Maybe Bryce Mitchell, somebody who's really fucking out there. If Larry Wheels quit streaming to relocate to Dagestan for 2 to 3 years, would he have a legit shot at being a UFC heavyweight champion? I think he's a little old for that. I'll say no. No. But, no. It's too much of a gap to make up. No. When will we see BC join you in MK as a guest? Boy, that is a very good question. How do I answer that one? Let me think about that one. BC and I have a great relationship. And as far as I am concerned, he can come on whenever he wants. As far as the rest of the MK staff is concerned, he can come on whenever he wants. But I don't have the final say over whether he's allowed to do that. And until the people who do grant that, we'll have to just wait. That's all I can say. I said have New York Rick on any upcoming Friday. I don't know Rick that well. I wouldn't be opposed to it in theory, but I don't know him that well. I'd be a little bit presumptuous, I think, on my part, but maybe. What do you make of Dana saying MMA has a middle class while very few make money in boxing? You don't want a middle class getting brain damage, but guys like Cub, Jim Miller, and Tavares have been successful. I mean, it really just depends on your view. I mean, partly that's just a dodge so that they don't have to pay people what they're owed, right? Everyone understands that. Like, this is the funny thing to me. Like, now that Dana's doing all this media, and I'll get questions from people who I know some of the people who have written some of these big articles that you've seen. And one of them texted me and was like, what do you think about it? And like, one of the things I was trying to explain to him was like, dude, under no circumstance, and this is true for any fight promoter, him, Coker, Hearn, fucking Aram, you name it, doesn't matter, particularly if they're good. you are under no obligation to take anything they say at face value. In fact, you have an obligation to reject it. And only after double checking are you allowed to then be like, okay, well, he makes a point here. Never before that. Never before that. So partly what you have to understand is when they're like, oh, well, there's a middle class in UFC. There is something to be said for that. It's not entirely untrue, but it's also just a bit of a dodge about overall pay. Secondly, there is another way to look at it, which is that you're not supposed to make a middle class out of this. You're supposed to make winners and losers, and that's it. The idea is that it's a depletion machine. The longer you fight, the more you will just lose. Not maybe the fights, but your faculties, your quality of living. And so the deal is you trade off a little bit of that, some of that, if you can get really rich doing it. But if that equation falls apart, is it really worth it? That is at least one perspective to share, that you almost want a certain degree of unfairness, not unfairness, but lopsided winners and losers as a way to weed out people who would otherwise be just endangering their health by continuing. How do you decide who will co-host on Fridays? As a team, we just kind of pick. Is it done by what type of event is on the coming weekend? That plays a role, yes. Simply who's available, that tends to be one of the bigger ones. Or what goes into it when deciding who to ask. Who do we have a good relationship with? Who'd be good to talk on this card? Who's available? Who we'd have good rapport with? Things like that. It's not rocket science, you know. How sick would that be if Gaethje beats Topuria? Ilia might not be mentally there. This is his first fight since Georgina left him. I think he'll be fine, but it would be a monumental win for Gaethje to get that win, for sure. What's this one? Oops. Given your views on Abrahamic religions, have you spent any time thinking about free will? Some. What are your thoughts? It might be an illusion. Congrats on the CNN appearance. It's my second one, probably not my last one, although one never knows. Yeah, I don't know about free will. I've not read enough on it, certainly in a contemporary sense, to have a widely informed discussion. There's a guy who used to work at the Cato Institute who sort of like a left-leaning libertarian named Julian Sanchez, who's done some interesting discussions and work on free will, not as a philosopher, but as a guy who distills interesting philosophical ideas. And he's got some online YouTube stuff you can check out. Also some stuff on Nozick, which is pretty interesting. I tend to take a more biologically deterministic view of things. That sort of gives the game away here. GC would also be a great MK guest co-host too. GC. Who the fuck is GC? Graham Cracker. My mind is, I can't put two and two together here. I'm not sure who GC is. Luke, you had Jimmy on, and you guys were surprised South Florida, Miami had all kinds of, I wasn't surprised. Well, no. Miami, no. Orlando was the one I was surprised by. Why would that surprise you? We're literally a hub of all Latin America. Totally true. Totally true. Miami didn't surprise me. Miami, I didn't. Miami surprised me only in the sense of like, as good as I thought the food would be there and as ubiquitous, it was even better. So it was like a pleasant surprise, but it wasn't like an intellectual surprise. But I had been to Orlando many times, mostly for work, in fairness. And then I went for pleasure. I took Tuki to Disney World. This is a few years ago. And we stayed at a hotel that was relatively nearby. You guys know how the hotels get. You have to kind of stay a little further out to save a few coins. And there was like a strip that was like a nondescript strip, and we spent each day trying a new place, and each place was like fire. I was like, holy fuck. I had no idea how good the food was, the Hispanic food there. I was shocked. I didn't realize it would be like shitty. I don't have a high opinion of Orlando, to be very honest. And we're talking like mid-range places too, not like elite ones, just like, $15 kind of lunch places. They were awesome. O'Malley has stated he refuses to accept a bout in a smaller Apex cage. Good. I wonder about the juxtaposition of that and accepting an outdoors fight at the White House. I just think it's about him having the space he needs to move, the angles, the ability to retreat and then counter and also what advantage a wrestler might have against him. Now he's facing Zahabi. I don't know how relevant that will be. Zahabi has some takedowns. It's not the biggest part of his game, but something to pay attention to. All right, hold on here. GC is a guy on Ariel's show. Yeah, I don't. Is that Connor Burks? They call him GC or something? I don't know. You'll have to forgive me. I generally don't fucking know. All right, enough of that bullshit. Okay, boys and girls. Thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. MK tomorrow, and then yeah, lots of more coverage coming your way. I appreciate everyone who watched today. You guys are the best, and you know, I love you very much. I'll have some kind of recap of the fights. I won't have a live watch along. I'll have some recap on Saturday for you. And that'll be that. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Until next time, stay frosty. Bye.